Racism is absolutely alive and well in this country.
There was a lot of anger because there's so much hurt.
Reconciliation is not my responsibility, is not just Indigenous people's responsibility. Let's change, let's transform, let's heal. Welcome to Two Aunties and Reconciliation. Good day, everybody. Welcome back to our last episode. Our theme for this episode is ancestral futurism. And we have an amazing, beautiful human being joining us today, Stephanie Wood. She is from the Squamish Nation, but I'll let her share more about who she is and where she comes from after we do a quick introduction. Just want to say thank you to our viewers, to our listeners for being with us on this amazing journey of what is hopefully just the first series of other series to come, because Two Aunties and Reconciliation has been a beautiful journey. It's been beautiful conversation, beautiful sharing, beautiful teachings, and acts of reconciliation itself in our space as we've been together. So again, thank you so much for everybody for joining us and listening and learning and growing and hopefully really feeling and healing throughout, because that's our true intentionality of this podcast, is not just to share what reconciliation is, but really take you through I guess, I don't know, even messiness of what that is, and to delve into the space wholeheartedly with your whole self into the journey of reconciliation, because it is just so much more than a few items on a piece of paper or actions to be taken. It is so much more deeper, and we want your whole self and your four-body system and all of the beautiful things about being a human being to be involved in that space. Shelley, quickly, I'll introduce myself, then I'll pass it over to Shelley. Again, for those viewers that may be just joining us for the first time, my name is Shapela Matsiam, also known as Chief Leanne Joe. I'm one of 16 hereditary chiefs of the Squamish Nation. I'm also a descendant of the Tsleil-Waututh people, as well as the Kwakwaka'wakw people. And thank you for being here again. And I'll pass it over to Shell to introduce herself, as well as share any words, about this journey.
Right. Happy to be here. It has been a great series. I've loved every minute. Gela Kesla, Nugo Hekwa Gela Okwa. My traditional name is Hekwa Gela Okwa. Gela Kesla and Kwakwala means come well with me on this journey. So inviting all of us here and everybody watching and listening to come as your highest self. Come on this journey with us that we're exploring today with Stephanie. I'm so, grateful that we've been able to create these types of spaces, because in Kwakwaka'wakw culture, I've always heard my whole life growing up that, but if not for our children, what would our purpose be? So that everything that we do is for the next generations, and then so on and so on. And so to be able to have actual conversations about that is huge, because nobody had the conversation with me. It was just things that I had heard and seen. And now that we're, learning how to dialogue, it's going to make all the difference, I think. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Stephanie, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, share with our audience who you are, where you come from. And again, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thanks so much for having me both. Hot Squile, Tanoyap, Quitasalwit, Kuyan Koshamin, Stephanie Kuyansna, Tinachin Tha, Astahan Ohomeoch. I'm just learning our language now. I'm in our language program, and to be able to begin to introduce myself in the language is so special. We just started in September, and it was sort of struggling reading off the paper, and then now it's at the point where we can say it, and that's such a special place to be.
Oh, exciting.
I was saying the good day, you all. Kwatasawa is my ancestral name. Stephanie is my English name. And I'm living at Estahan, our village Estahan. That's where a lot of our family comes from, where my mom grew up. But I actually grew up off reserve close by in Lynn Valley. But we're living there now. And I'm so happy to be here with you both today. For family, my mom is the late Quatasawit as well. Quatasawit. Vera Paul is her maiden name. Now she's Vera Wood. My dad is Carl Wood. We come from the Lackett-Joe, Paul, Lewis, and White lines. And my dad's side has Scottish and English roots, but has been in Canada for quite a while. And yeah, I've always grown up and lived in our territory, which is also such an immense privilege that you just grow to like realize more and more that we got to grow up there. And now I work as a reporter, as a journalist, and I got interested in writing at a pretty young age, and it was something that Granny and Mom really encouraged and something I really wanted to do. And then I realized how many rich, true stories there were to tell. I was especially inspired like by our family and stuff to do that. And so that was what got me into journalism. And I've been doing it for 5 years now. And there's a lot of, 5 years at this job, I guess, since I did school and stuff. I guess it's been 7 years. But there's a lot of challenges that in that industry, like many industries we work in.
Right.
We're pushing against a lot of boundaries.
Absolutely.
But there's also so much possibility as well. So I look forward to talking about that more. But again, just thank you so much for having me to be a part of this.
Yeah, no, I will disclose and be truly authentic. I think it's come across throughout our episodes. We're family. Shelley Joe and I are family on my late grandfather's side of our family. And Shelley Joe has been a part of our lives since I can't remember when. It's been too many years where we've been in really close relationship. And basically, she's my sister. Even though she's a distant cousin, she's my sister. And same with Stephanie. Stephanie is my cousin on my late father's side. Shapelum Siam, Chief Philip Joe is my late father. And we are related through the Lackett-Joe family. And Stephanie's late mother, the late Vera Wood, was again like my sister. She was like my older sister. And again, watch Steffi grow up and become a beautiful young leader and reporter, writer, and a powerhouse unto herself. And that's been beautiful to witness. And, I want our viewers to know that this isn't, a lot of people see this as a negative, like we shouldn't be in space together because we're related, or we shouldn't do professional work together because we're related. And they're just like, but I don't know any other way, right? I want to acknowledge that that's a part of our culture. It's a part of our way of being, doing, and knowing is everybody comes along for the ride. Everybody's a part of our journey, right? Together. And we are better for it. We thrive more because we have those we love and those that we are close to and surrounded by that come along with us. So, and I think that lends itself beautifully to this theme or to the episode that we're, having conversation about of ancestral futurism and talking about. And I think for viewers and listeners, what is ancestral futurism? And for me, it's about this constant connection between our ancestors, all of them. Like since we go back in time to when we first came into this world, when the Creator created us and brought us in, all of our origin stories tell us where we came from, how we came to be here, how we are in relationship with the land, with all living things, and how those creatures provided for us so that we could thrive. And also how we're connected to the spirit world and how we have that ability to engage in all of these spaces. They are not silos of spaces, they're fully interconnected into who we are. But that again goes back to all of our ancestors, and that I know they're here with us, right? They're 100% here with us, that they're literally standing with us in this room, and that they're cheering us on, and they're loving it, and they're loving these beautiful conversations. And I can literally see my chichia and my dad and my grandma all like being in that balcony, smiling away with pure love and joy in their hearts. But how that energy also ties to the future, or our people yet to be, the seventh generation, right? Our children, right? Our unborn grandchildren, and the connection between all of those spaces. And I think, again, for me, it's a natural way of being and knowing that. But I would wanted to explain again to those that may not truly understand that the significance of that in our lives is daily. It's, and we don't move through life without that connectedness in our space.
Yeah, without that knowing.
Yeah, very much.
I was always told, everywhere you go, you're representing your family. And that didn't just mean my mom, my dad, and my siblings. It meant aunties and uncles and grannies and grandpas. And I was very aware of that growing up. And it was not just for me to behave, but I think it also gave me a real sense of belonging that I think a lot of people in this country don't get.
No, and I think that also bodes to, our full introductions of who we are when we're in space together. That we don't just say, "Hi, I'm Leanne. I hold this position and this is what I do." No, we go into full like kinship ties, relationship to land and place, to, again, real deep spaces of connection, because without kinship ties, then we don't know our relationality to things. We don't know our accountability and responsibility to spaces. And I think that's so beautiful, right? And necessary, because I think our colonial and capitalistic systems don't allow for that kind of connection, right?
So I was really happy to hear you not only introduce yourself in your language, but to speak about your connections, where you're from, where you grew up, and all of that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think it's such a beautiful part of just who we are and how we are. And even bringing that to non-Indigenous spaces, I'm like, this is such a gift in how to be that we can even teach other people. Like telling non-Indigenous people, tell me who you come from and where you come from when you introduce yourself, like not a professional introduction. And you can tell it can throw people for a loop a little bit, but then but people feel the meaning and the weight of that, like
Yes.
they do. And to introduce yourself that way, it's about including your full self, not like severing who you are when you walk into a conference room or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. We spoke about this on other episodes about how we've been siloed, and that's not, like you said, professional to be any other way in those settings. Yeah. So you're right. I think we can teach a whole lot of that too.
Yeah.
Everybody else here in Canada.
I really want to share too, just because I've known you've been in the language program, and I know how meaningful it is and purposeful it is for you. And to hear that, I almost started crying, because I'm just like, again, this is ancestral futurism at its best in that moment when you're introducing yourself in our language, with that intentionality, with the love that comes with that, with the belonging, right? And sense of purpose, because that's when we are speaking our language, when we are revitalizing it. Again, just makes my heart sing and soar, because I have spoken to this quite a few times throughout our episodes of I am not a language speaker. I haven't been given the opportunity. We didn't have the kind of opportunities that you guys have today to learn the language, right? To become, speakers, to become fluent, to become comfortable. Like when I went through high school and post-secondary, there were no Skoltmish language opportunities. Zero, right? I had to take French or Spanish in high school. That was the only language option I had, right? My mom was the one that instituted, or her and others within the nation that brought that into the educational systems in North Vancouver and Squamish to have our youth take that. But of course, I went to a high school that didn't have that offering, because there was only one high school at the time in North Vancouver that offered that, where a majority of our students went. So, but I think that bodes to, or speaks to, again, the immense opportunities that our young people are getting that even our generation had. I mean, and how far we've come. I want to recognize that too, that our parents went to residential school. Your grandparents went to residential school. And how far in from that generation to our generation to your generation and now my son's generation, just how things have really shifted, and where we are at, and again, why we're having this conversation. And I was hoping to ask, or have you share the story of the what you wrote about with your grandmother when you met with Auntie Lucille, and because you spoke about that already, about these rich stories that we have in our families and our nations and our communities, and I know that that space is what really potentially catapulted you into this realm of journalism and using the written word, to communicate more about our stories and who we are, and etc. And are you able to share a bit about, that space, and also what you see, how that has impacted your future, or where you want to go and what you want to see?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Um, well, like I said, I was already interested to some degree
mm,
in writing, and it was kind of just from like mom was, reading to me really young, and I just wanted her to keep reading to me, and I started to write my own tiny novels and stuff. And then that writing competition came up when I was like a teen, and it was for Indigenous students in particular, and it was supposed to be about residential schools and their legacy. And I wound up writing something that was not direct, but like my understanding was tied to Granny's experience,
right.
right? So it was still technically fictional, but that was, where it came from, and she knew that. And I think it was the kind of first time, I guess, where I was so young, but it was the first time that I was like, first of all, trying to write something that had to do with the real world, not just like a fantasy.
Mm,
I think it was forcing me to grapple with my understanding of our history,
right.
right? And being like, how do you even do that? Like, I guess when you realize there's a responsibility there, you know what I mean?
Right. Yes.
And
There's a weight that
there's
comes
a
with.
weight to it
Right.
that when you realize, oh, you're like, this isn't just something that happened to my granny
Mm,
and our other relatives. Like, this is something that's part of all of us. Like, it's real, and I don't know. I guess, yeah, like that weight. I guess that is the right word, where it's something that I knew before, but I guess the weight kind of hit me in that way because I hadn't really talked about it myself, or had to talk about it before that as a teen, right? You hear adults say stuff and you don't really say anything, and then you realize how hard it is to talk about and how much work it takes to talk about. And So it was a weird experience actually, because it was my, I don't think I fully understood in the moment, but in hindsight it was like, oh, there's a lot of responsibility to telling someone's story and to talking about real stuff that
Mm.
has happened to
Mm.
people, and trying to contribute to a conversation around it, like how are you talking about it in a way that's helping and moving us forward, like we talk about futurism,
Right.
right? How are we moving everyone forward and improving the conversation and helping, and and yeah, like it was kind of overwhelming when I wound up winning. I was definitely overwhelmed. I was like, oh my God, like I think I just wanted to write something. And then I remember like Granny putting up the picture and stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh. And again, like I think the responsibility of it was almost overwhelming in a
Overwhelming.
way.
Mm.
But at the same time, the power of it felt so apparent as well. And Granny and Mum and really everyone in the family, but they just had always really encouraged that part of what I wanted to do. And I think it just became more and more apparent to me also is, just how people don't always feel safe to tell their story,
Mm.
and especially to a wider audience, let alone their family when there's trauma involved. And
Right.
just realizing how much, again, the weight of that made me more interested in getting into. I wasn't thinking of journalism yet, but like helping tell people's stories
Mm.
and wanting to kind of empower people to tell theirs. And so it just naturally went towards journalism as I was thinking about that.
Right.
It was something that came up when we talk about, what job you're going to do and everything in high school. And then I kind of began pursuing it. And it took a long time to get there. First, I did creative writing, and then I did my Bachelor of Arts. Then I took some time off school, and I tried to get into journalism. But no one wants to publish you if you've never been published before. So no one wanted.
And it's this
It's that
terrible cycle.
silly cycle that's in so many industries where it's like, how are
Right.
you supposed to get a foot in the door?
Mhm.
And I just didn't understand how. And so I wound up going to get a master's in journalism, and I really didn't want to do more school, to be honest. But I was like, I just want to do it. but it was kind of the only way
To get into the
to get
industry.
into the industry.
Right.
And I found out once I got into the industry that it is very much about like knowing people and having
Right.
connections. And if you don't have those connections, it's very hard to get a start.
Right.
And so, but yeah, like I kind of jumped forward, but I really do think that's exactly, it was a catapult. Like you said, like all of the stuff kind of reinforced itself of me wanting to be able to help, in some way, help other people feel empowered to tell like their stories,
Mm.
And then once I got into journalism, I realized that all of my grand ideas of it were a little bit idealistic, and it actually has a lot of challenges, and it also has a colonial legacy, and it's also like white dominated, and it also has for a long time not been a safe space for Indigenous journalists. That has come a long way from Indigenous journalists pushing and dealing with a lot of crap. When you speak to the older journalists from a generation or two ahead, I'm just like, wow, they put up with so much, but they were trying to, they were thinking of the next generation. They're trying to make
Exactly.
a space where someone like me can work in that industry, and now I can. And yeah, so it has all of its challenges. It has all of these expectations again of like separating yourself, not getting too connected to people. And one of the things Indigenous journalists dealt with for a long time was the idea that we couldn't cover Indigenous stories because we couldn't be subjective about it and that kind of thing. And so that's something where we come a long, long, long way, but that's sort of like the legacy that everyone was dealing with. And yeah, so that the fact that I was so supported, especially by the women in our family, to just like lean into what I liked to do and what I wanted to do was the reason I ever felt like I could pursue this career that felt very sort of like mysterious and enigmatic and opaque, and like, how do you do that? But I felt that immense like, you can do it from everyone, that really just made me actually feel like I could.
Excellent.
What a blessing.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, and the power that speaks to, again, this power of relationship.
Yeah.
The power of, guidance and support and encouragement and love and caring and, again, reciprocity, right? I mean, if it wasn't, again, for the shoulders of the giants that we stand on, those women and men and aunts, uncles, cousin, grandparents, parents that have laid all of those foundations for us, we wouldn't be, again, where we are and doing what we're doing and saying what we're saying and building what we're building. And I think that's just a beautiful, again, a place where we need to have gratitude and recognition for. And because, again, without them, we'd still be fighting the battles, right? And trying to break down these spaces and that sort of thing. But thank you for sharing that. What came to my mind, and I know it isn't about futurism or that sort of thing, but we have spoken about harm a lot, and colonialism, capitalism, patriarchy, like all of the systems of harm, of racism, discrimination, bias, all of those things, and the legacies of, all of these acts, the Indian Act and etc., that have played massive roles in Canada's history, which isn't our history. Like, Shelley has reminded, our listeners and our viewers that isn't our history. That's Canada's history. But in the space that you work in, and in the institution of journalism and media and a big spaces of where social media plays such a huge role in our lives, especially for young people. Can you speak to, because I'm really curious about how harmful is it? Because we're all about truth telling. We're all about authenticity in this conversation and calling those truths out. And so that people can really know what it's really truly like, right? Is it as harmful is the spaces you work in as harmful as I think it is? Like, because I know educational spaces can be super harmful. I know that the health system is crazy harmful and etc. We all know that. We experience that, right? Do you experience that, and within the spaces that you hold on a daily basis, does that come up?
hmm So I feel like I've been so lucky to wind up in a workplace, the workplace that I am, where I feel like safe in that space.
Right.
But as part of the overall journalism world, I am often aghast or upset or brokenhearted sometimes at the way stuff is framed, or just disappointed. And
Absolutely.
hearing about how newsrooms function, hearing about how people don't feel safe, how young Indigenous and BIPOC folk are pushed out of newsrooms, feel like they cannot speak up, cannot push back. Like there's very much still a big power structure in place where you're a young reporter and they're like, you should be happy to be here. Don't cause a fuss. And if try to push for better, try to show how colonialism is showing up in the newsroom, often either they feel pushed out or literally just get so burnt out
Yeah.
fighting all the time
Right.
that they leave, like really amazing people who want to be in the industry. And it's a struggling industry overall with a lot of, like, once again, social media and like advertising and all of these things. Like there's just a bunch of intervening factors of why there's been a big decline in journalism jobs. And so there's often, no matter what place you're in, this is sort of like, you're lucky to be here, so like don't rock the boat kind of feeling.
Right.
And it's, you hear that in art spaces or a lot of niche spaces where people are like, oh, there's not, like, it's that scarcity mindset that's also very colonial.
Very
Like, there's not enough to go
extreme.
around. You're lucky to have
Us and
this.
them. If you
Yes.
get, then I don't.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or you're removing from my power and control. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of like top down power that's still very deeply entrenched. And then there's a lot of journalism norms that are very colonial in nature that, again, so many people are pushing up against and challenging. But they're really built into the job,
Yes.
which once again is like comes from a colonial legacy as well. So there's often been this idea, like once again it's being challenged now, but this idea that like, this is my story that I'm writing and all these materials are mine. It's like, I just recorded someone tell me their life story. How is that mine?
Right.
But there was for a long time this norm, I wouldn't share that recording, and we have copyright to the photos, and all this stuff is like ours now, you know, and we're not going to change the story because it's editorial independence and all this stuff. And there won't be like gift giving, and you can't receive a gift if someone tries to give you one.
Right.
Once again, like, there's a lot of pushback on that now. Like, I'm in a workplace that will allow for that kind of thing, but not everywhere does. Not everyone does, and every context is different. And so yeah, there's a lot of those challenges of like reciprocity and ownership, right? Those ideas of journalism is like, we own this stuff. And for a long time, reciprocity was not something that was encouraged. And now there's pockets of it. Now you see different rules across different newsrooms and different situations. And again, like, I'm lucky to be in a space where I can be like, we're going to have to give them more time. We're going to have to explain this more thoroughly. Like, I'm going to bring, you know, like, offerings for the elders, like, and all of that is encouraged, but it's not like that across the board.
Okay.
And that it's always heartbreaking when you hear that stories of all different kinds of BIPOC journalists dealing with feeling targeted, ostracized, or like they, you know, like, or like their ethics are being put on the line for the interest of like the corporation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the almighty corporation has no values, right? That are Indigenous based or human based values, right?
It's materialistic.
Yeah. It's always about the bottom line, and it's about the financial wealth that needs to be created. And again, upholding patriarchy, upholding colonialism, upholding a value system that doesn't include anybody but those that have the white privilege in those spaces. And I mean, I'm happy to call that out. I'm happy to draw attention to it, because if we don't, then again, these systems that we are all working in, we continue just to battle and battle and battle all the time. But I want to shift and move again kind of towards the idea of ancestral futurism, and I guess really big picture, really visionary, and you know, spaces of because I know what I want for my son, right? And my nieces, my nephews, my godchildren. I know what future that I would love to see for them. And because I know that, one, they're begging and crying and pleading for it, right? I hear my son say, how can I live? What is this future where I can't afford a home, right? Without a certain amount of income, how do I raise a family, right? And again, these copious amounts of expectation around wealth accumulation that butts against his value system, like, wholeheartedly. And again, just there's such tension in that space, but also I haven't lost hope that the future that I desire, that I want to see transformed towards, that is still possible, right? I haven't lost that hope. That flame hasn't gone out. I have moments where the flame kind of flickers and is almost ready to go out. And I have those moments where I'm just like, I feel utterly defeated. And, you know, I will wholly acknowledge that it's not always perfect all the time, and that hope wanes. But again, I literally tell people all the time, I said, in those moments, you know, where I'm waning and it's so hard, and you just are just like, I'm done. I don't know if I have any more to give and to do and to fight. Then my son will walk in the room and, hi, Mom. Right. And then I'm back. I'm back with that hope. I'm back with that, you know, flame. It's ignited. It's like it's got air again. And, you know, and all it took was just, hey, Mom. Right. That's it. That's all it takes. Everything above that is like even just more fuel for that fire, right? Kind of thing. So again, going back to the idea of visioning and hoping and dreaming, Can we speak in, as we move towards the last half of our episode around that space, and what does that look like? Shelley, I'm curious, before we go to Steph, as a mom, right? As an auntie, as a sister, as a grandma, daughter, all of those things. What is ancestral futurism, and kind of what are the hopes and dreams for our people yet to be in the seventh generation?
Yeah, when I think of my grandchildren specifically right now, I would love for them to grow up and be able to do not just what they're good at, but what they're passionate about. And that they don't have to jump through a million hoops to know how to do that.
Right.
We've spoken about post-education and how harmful that is. And, it's a struggle for a lot of people, even just to go to the schools, and the fact that you needed that to get into the industry. These are all man-made structures that have created these obstacles. They're not necessary. And it would be my hope that we can just begin to nurture that in them, like how our ancestors did, our children's natural gifts, and that they get to do that in the world.
Right.
To live authentically and passionately, without fear, without the struggles that are created because of the systems.
Without sacrificing their values.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Or their identity, or like who they truly are. Like authentically walk into space and just be wholly like, I'm here, yay, let's go.
Yeah. I'm going to do what I do best.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, thank you for sharing that. I truly appreciate that, because I think it really summarizes that what I really truly hope for our future generations. Steph, I'll turn to you, and what are your hopes and dreams and visions and spaces of transformation that you would love to see for, you're a young person, what do you see for, and again, hope for?
I love what you both said, because I feel like it really ties into something that was on my mind, where I was just thinking about how much I want all of the next generations to be able to show up in any space and feel safe there, right? And not only safe, but empowered to be there. And you can see how each generation, when we talk about our grandparents and our parents, has been helping the next sort of shed a layer of this imposed shame and barriers that aren't ours, right? Of how much, what you can do or what you should do and what you're capable of. And I just think about, you can see each generation is helping shed the next of some of this burden that's been put on us. And so I feel like if we continue to do that, because when I showed up, I was feeling so insecure because of all of this colonial stuff that's been pushed on us about, oh, am I going to be, I don't want to be the difficult one. I don't want to be the slow one. I don't want to be the one causing a fuss as the one Indigenous person here, and as much as I knew that was constructed, it's just so it burrows in there because that's what they want it to do. And if that can just be something that, again, we just help the next generation and the one after that be that's never even going to cross their mind, right? They're just going to be themselves and feel totally safe to advocate for themselves and advocate for what's right.
Right.
That is something I really think of. And then, and I just think of how, again, all these little things really, really, really add up to incredible changes. Just in language, they were talking about how every single one of us in the class, there's 12 of us, all of us have someone who was on the elder language team that helped put the dictionary together. Every single one of us has a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle that was part of it. And when we did our little presentation at the end, where we're just telling a short kid story about a frog, and that's that's where we're at. But our teachers was bringing up, after each of us presented, bringing up our ancestor, who was there, like Granny Lucille.
Yes.
Auntie Lila, who's here with us, and all others who have passed on. Like, he was bringing up the person from each person's family. And that was just incredible to think about. And
Right.
just bringing up how all of them just gave what they could, right? Like,
Mm.
gave everything they could. And just put their knowledge there to help build this language program. And now we're seeing, like you said, that means future generations are going to be able to pick it back up. That now we have kids who are growing up with it as their first language, right? Within just a
Right.
couple generations, it's like they tried to disrupt it, and we already have kids again who are growing up with it as their first language. Just like all of these tiny incremental steps add up. And like, so even if you're not having children, it's like, what little step can you make that's going to make, like the people who came before me in journalism who made it a safer space for me to show up, right? Like,
Right.
what are we going to do to make it a better space that way? And then I think, once again, with futurism, it's about imagining a better, more expansive world. And so it's like, what does it mean to just be imagining beyond coming up against these barriers all the time that we are? Like, what about when we break through those, like, what we want to create? And
Right.
we're always thinking about climate in my job because I write about the environment. It's an environment magazine called The Narwhal. And again, young people are so rightfully stressed and in grief about the way that the world is.
Right.
And it's like, what solutions that Indigenous people have to retain water, to bring back wildlife, to bring back salmon. Like, there's no shortage of brilliance that I'm encountering all the time. Like, how to build homes that are resilient and do like cultural burning, and like like there's so much brilliance and dedication, like just like undying dedication.
Mm.
And so people will often be like, how do you hold on to hope when you're reporting on climate change? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to people who inspire me every single day, who just feel incredible responsibility for the future, right? Like, it's not just a given. It's like, I'm responsible for that future. I'm going to do everything I can to fight for
Right.
it. And that, again, that keeps that hope going. And then everyone can feed on each other's and like
Right.
share in that when ours might flicker a little bit, which is going to happen. But
Yeah. You said responsibility, and I think that's something that's come up in other episodes.
Yes.
The people that are invested and passionate in doing the work that we're talking about feel that responsibility. And it's not heavy.
No.
Like, it's not burdensome, but it gives purpose, I think. The difference in how we view and receive that responsibility, that it's gives us purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I also think too that a sense of belonging and identity and all of these beautiful things of values that we uphold. Because I don't know, I mean, there's very few Indigenous specific spaces that I can walk into and not have that hope, not have that brilliance, not have that passion, not have that dedication, right? Yeah, do we feel burnout and sometimes we're stressed and all this kind of stuff. However, we still, show up, give like 1,000%, whether it's in community, whether it's in nation, whether it's in family, whether it's in workspace, etc. We are constantly in a state of giving, of being in service. And I'm like, I appreciate you sharing that you see that you're inspired by that you get that, right? Because I had a different view of that would be really hard to report on the environment consistently and with all of the struggles and, everything. Because again, our children are sitting there going, what kind of future do we have when the world is burning up around us and it's hotter every single year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, but to hear that, and I think for me, because I've been putting in a call to action, at least one or two or more of them in each episode. And the call to action, I think, for our viewers and our listeners is look to that Indigenous brilliance, look to that Indigenous leadership, look to the Indigenous stories, look to our practices of sustainability and environmental protection and land back, water back, culture back, language back. Like, all of these spaces are, again, like you said, for this hope, for this future, for the next generation. And that again, I love that you use the word brilliance because that's literally what it is. And it's legacy brilliance as well. It's not like they went to school most of the time for that knowledge. It's been passed on ancestrally from one generation to the next generation and so on. And so I love that. And that's my call to action to our viewers and to our listeners is be curious, really lean into that. Right? Lean into the teachings that we do have to offer you because, I mean, I don't know how many prophecies are out there that tell you that we're literally here and we will save ourselves, we'll save humanity, we're going to save the planet. And,
Yeah.
And I do not believe those prophecies. I believe that we all came here with a purpose
Yeah.
to do this work and to be in this space and to continue with the legacies of the people before us, right?
Yeah.
Because I think too, the work my son is doing now, he's in a summer position as a land guardian, and he is literally what you just shared is he has that sense of belonging because he's literally in the water, by the water, in the forests, right? Learning about every ounce of land in his territory.
Mhm.
And to me, that's not that he didn't know that before. It's just being embedded even deeper. It's in different ways, if through different experiences with different people, and in an expanded territory as well with the organization that he's working with. And I just love the excitement that he comes home with because there's always a story every day of Mom, guess what? And tells me everything, and we go into everything, and that again continues to ignite my passion and my willingness to have a hope for the future. I'm mindful that we're kind of getting towards the end of closing out, and Shelley, is there something that you wanted to share that's been on your heart and mind?
Yeah, one final thought. We're talking about futurism, ancestral futurism, and it's been mentioned that our children are at the center, the focus of everything we do. And so my call to action for listeners and viewers is to look to our youth, the next generations. You have some brilliance that we never had because of colonization, the Indian Act, and the Indian residential schools. And our ancestors, our parents and our grandparents have done the work to heal and grow and to be better examples for the next generations. And so now I think the next generations have way more, you would have less blinders without everything that we've had to live through and experience.
Right.
And so your brilliance is on some level that I can't even comprehend, I don't think. And so my call to action is for everybody to really look at our future generations for their brilliance, for their visions of what can be. Yeah, I think we've been silenced for enough generations that it's just time now to really release the full potential of our children.
Yeah, I think that resonates with me wholly when we talk about rematriation. I think that also goes to, as much as you need to be uplifting Indigenous women's voices, spaces, etc., through rematriation. I think that also extends to this younger generation, that you need to be leaning and uplifting and, in not a colonial way, not in a colonial sense of, this is what they need to do to be successful. I mean, lean into the brilliance of their knowledge, of their curiosity, of their hope and their vision about what transformed spaces look like, because we can't do it the way we're doing it. It has to change. It has to shift. It has to transform. Every single institution, system has to do that work. And I hope, again, that we can lean into very deeply to the next generation for that. Because again, we're closer to retirement than not. And
What?
and I'm happy to move into that space as a junior elder in the making to be the one, like Tim always says, I'm so looking forward to just where I'm the one sitting doing the storytelling and, and I'm there to just uplift and support and guide and, you know, and just be present with beautiful brilliance unfolding in front of me.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm just like, yeah, I can totally do that. I would be, yes, 100%. I'm in. Let's do it.
I'm literally experiencing that with you, having sat with you today, that you've achieved so much in your young life in both worlds. And that's such a powerful place to be, to have, the colonial knowledge from their institutions of education and ancestral wisdom. Just by you speaking the words that you did at the beginning of the episode, I was like, wow, she's got this like degree from university and this degree of connection to ancestor, to self-knowing really is what that is, that grounding, real grounding in humanness. And not everybody has that. And so I just want to say, I see the power in you being able to walk in both worlds and really embrace that for yourself to create the changes that I know you're going to create. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We're going to leave our closing to our beautiful young person, my beautiful niece sitting in front of me. Is there last words to wrap up our episode about ancestral futurism that you would love to share and before we wrap up?
Yeah. Again, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, when I think about futurism, I think it's that we will be here and we will be together, and we know that. That's the one thing we know, and then everything else we don't know. We dream and we try to dream the best, and then hopefully that leaves the foundation for something even, better than we could
Right.
have dreamed.
Exactly.
Again, going back to the language, like the revitalization is apparently happening faster than they even expected when they first started speaking to those elders. Like when you just have, again, like you said, the encourage, that support, the belonging, and you just can't underestimate what that means. So I think just when it can be hard to envision a future when we do have so much to worry about, like that's true, that's real. To not underestimate what each little step means, because I can just think of so many times that when I was young and was inspired by or impacted by, an older person in our family in a way that they probably would never even realize. And that all that is having an effect all the time. So I think that would just be the main thing I'd want to leave us with. It's just, you can't even think about always the importance of every step you're doing when you're supporting the people around you, like what that can have, what that can make. And once again, we won't know
Right.
when we're thinking to the far future, but we're just trying to build the best we can.
I think that's a beautiful way to close the episode, because we don't know what kind of impact we're going to have just being present or just sharing something, right, with somebody, being in space with somebody, or being there to support somebody. Like all these little actions about who we are as human beings when we're together, when we're connected, when we create a sense of safety and belonging, trust, and allow for learning to take place and for curiosity to be there, for knowledge to be shared, to be with like-minded individuals, to be in place where our values are reflected back to us and are upheld. Again, those, like you said, those are little impacts that are generally pretty huge in our lives. And I hope that our viewers and our listeners walk away with, they have that too. We all have this ability as human beings to show up in those ways and be that way, and to have, again, we're not intentionally saying, I'm going to go have impact today. Hopefully we do. Hopefully we get up and we rise and say, I want to have impact today. But it's just allowing for yourself and your authenticity and your love and light to come out for that to be done in a really good way, right? So I'll close with that, and thank you so much for being with us. I truly appreciate your time and your words of wisdom, and again, this love and light that shines brightly for our future generations. Because when I look at you and your brother and your sister, and when I look at your son and your daughters and my son and all of our everybody around us, um, that light shines so bright that I'm going to need to put on some shades, and that's amazing. So again, thank you to everybody for being with us on this last episode, and we look forward to potentially future episodes, and hopefully we'll have more inspiring guests and youth to be with us and share with us. Any closing words of my co-host?
Yeah, really grateful to be part of this journey, and noting that it is a journey that it started with our parents and their parents, and that we've brought it this far, and we're inviting younger generations into the fold, and that this will be a continued safe space for us to explore the possibilities moving forward for
Awesome.
all of us here in Canada, not just Indigenous people, but
Mm.
everybody, that we can build a safe and better country all together.
So, from the two aunties talking about reconciliation, again, thanks for being with us, and we appreciate your time, effort, and energy to come on this journey with us. So, Osium, Gaelic Asla.